Good afternoon. My name is Mike Petrilli. I'm the Executive Vice President here at the Thomas B. Fordham Institute. For those of you who haven't been here before and don't know Fordham, we are one of the nation's premier education policy think tanks. One of the things that makes us unique is that we don't just do think tank stuff in Washington, we also do on-the-ground stuff in Ohio, where we have our roots, including sponsoring charter schools, working on advocacy things in Columbus. And when we first got started, the first thing we did in Ohio was to start a privately funded voucher program in Dayton. And so school choice has been a big part of what we're about, and we're very happy that school choice has really grown and expanded in Ohio and is doing all kinds of good there in the Buckeye State. We're really glad to be a part of this event today with our friends at the Alliance for School Choice. Excited to see them release their report, and very excited to be here as well with Kevin Chavis and to hear from some of the parents in the DC Scholarship Program. You know, we are here in Washington, D.C., and there's a debate going on in Washington, D.C. around the degree to which we can trust the states. This is in relation to what's going to happen with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. There is a lot of rhetoric about how everybody agrees that we need to provide more state flexibility, but when rubber hits the road, you actually see a lot of groups pushing back against that. And the assumption is we can't really trust the states to do right by our most vulnerable students. And yet what I think we're going to hear about today from the Alliance for School Choice is that, at least in recent history, as in 2011, the states have been incredibly progressive and aggressive in promoting the needs of our most disadvantaged kids. Huge progress in 2011 on the school choice front. Another recent report this week, the National Council on Teacher Quality, showing huge progress on the teacher effectiveness front. And while some of the things, say on teacher effectiveness, may have been encouraged by the race to the top coming out of Washington now 2 years ago, really you look at the evidence on what's been happening on private school choice, on charter schools, on LIFO, on collective bargaining, on all kinds of issues. Those things are not being driven from Washington. They're happening from the ground up because of governors and state legislators who believe strongly in reform and believe strongly in doing what's best for kids. And I think that's very exciting news. And I hope that our colleagues here in Washington, D.C. take notice of this. It may be true that there still are some states that you can't trust, but the vast majority of states are moving aggressively on these fronts, and that's fantastic news. What we're going to do today as part of celebrating National School Choice Week is to hear from Kevin Chavis about the national scene on school choice, to hear from some parents here in D.C., and we're very glad to have you with us today, about their experience with choice, and then to have the Alliance for School Choice release some of the latest data on what's happening out there around the country. So I'll play a little bit of moderator at times, but until then, let me just introduce to you Kevin Chavis. He needs no introduction, which is why I'll keep it very short. But a former council member here in the District of Columbia, huge advocate for school choice, is now working with many reform groups in the country, including the Alliance for School Choice, to promote school choice nationally, was a huge figure in getting the program in D.C. started and now getting it rekindled more recently, and we're pleased to have him with us. Please welcome Kevin Chavis.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. Every time I see Michael, he gets less and less hair. You're coming around, man. I like that. I like that.
I'm taking it like a man.
Yeah, there you are. Go all the way, man. Don't go halfway. So this is an exciting day. As Michael said, 2011 was almost like a watershed year. It's going to be a demarcation that we remember. And the Wall Street Journal called it the year of school choice, and what you're going to hear from some of my colleagues will suggest that. But I think it's deeper than that. I think really was the year of the parent revolution. It really began in 2011. Because Michael is right. This whole idea of making sure that every child has equal access to a high quality education is not going to begin or end in Washington. Frankly, it's going to begin with the parents, like the parents you're going to hear, who I love in the DC Scholarship Program. But all over the country, parents are stepping forward. And legislators in state houses all over America, and governors and mayors and local elected officials are responding because they have to. I mean, I got back last night from New Mexico, and I was with a disabled woman, Amira Rashid, who is a teacher, who is advocating for a special needs bill there. And she says, as a teacher, she's severely disabled, and as a teacher, and not only as a teacher, but as someone who lives day to day with a disability that has left her wheelchair bound. She said the only way she could extricate herself to the point where she could have some self-independence was through a quality education. She's working on her master's, she's teaching special needs kids, and she said these kids don't need to be labeled and put in a box or put in a closet or put in, you know, the basement for those special kids that like they used to do. They need to be celebrated. But not only that, women like Kelly Williams-Bolar, who last year was arrested for using her father's address to put her daughter in a better school in Ohio. She was prosecuted, convicted, sentenced to 10 days in jail, and the judge said, we're making an example of you because you're taking advantage of the system's resources. What the judge should have said was that we're going to hold the Akron School District in contempt for not giving your daughter a quality education. That's what the Akron School District should be liable for. That's what the judge should have said. So we're seeing all over. 3 days ago, I was in Mississippi, where, you know, a number, and this is record-setting, folks, a number of Democratic black elected officials are ready to jump out in front and lead the charge for a charter school bill that has meaning in the state of Mississippi. The same thing's happening in Alabama. It's happening in Kentucky. And not only that, we may have a private school choice bill. We're right on the verge of that in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Indiana passed landmark legislation last year. I was with Mitch Daniels last week, and he was so proud of the fact that nearly 5,000 parents have signed up for their private school choice program. This is a real revolution that we're in the midst of, and the throes of which we'll never see again. It's only going to get better. And the reason why, Michael, this revolution is taking hold is people aren't going to accept the poor quality options that most of them have in this country. They're just not going to accept it. So what we have to do, and what I urge all of you to do, is continue to be vigilant, continue to fight for these families, continue to push the status quo to change. Because at the end of the day, if we don't fix this, then we're going to have major problems, not just with our economy, but with the lifeblood of our population and citizenry going forward. So I'm pleased to be here. I mean, this is, you know, an exciting time. I am just, well, y'all can tell, I'm just overwhelmed with the opportunity to move into 2012 and to build on what we did in 2011, because I can tell you, with what I'm seeing around the country, you know, people don't care about the labels, a Republican or Democrat. They don't care about whether or not you're rich or poor. What they want and what they share is the desire to make sure all children get what they deserve. And if we don't do that, then we're not serving our country. And that's why I'm real excited about where we're going and where we've been in 2011. So thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, now we're very honored to hear from two of the parents participating in the DC Scholarship Program. Let's hear first from Sheila Jackson, who is the mother of Shawnee. Thank you. Please welcome.
Greetings, everyone. I thank you for this opportunity to allow me to summarize my experience with the Opportunity Scholarship Program. I am Sheila Jackson. I have a 16-year-old daughter, Shawnee, who has been a recipient of this scholarship for 7 years now. Shawnee was in the DC public school system, which was failing her. And I decided as her mother that I had to do something so that my daughter could receive the quality education that I desired for her to have. Unfortunately, I was not able to pay for private education and actually was informed by her third grade teacher about this scholarship program, and I investigated, applied for it, and she was accepted. So she was in the public school, DC public school system, intimidated by math, and the teachers that she had just did not want to do anything further than their normal curriculum to help her. When she got into the scholarship program, I elected the school for her, which she went to until she could go no further because they only went to 8th grade. She's where she is now through graduation, And as a matter of fact, math is now her strong subject, and she's an honor roll student preparing for college, making college visits, doing all the normal things that a teenager does. And I'm just happy and blessed that she was able to be a recipient of the Opportunity Scholarship Program to afford her the education I cannot pay for. So I thank everyone that has been in support of the Opportunity Scholarship Program, all the people that stood on the front line to get this program reauthorized for our children, and I ask that you continue to be supportive of this scholarship program here in our area as well across the nation. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sheila. You know, it's a story we hear again and again, you know, from parents that these programs really change lives and provide opportunities that just wouldn't be there. Okay, now we get to hear from Patricia William, who's the mother of Pierre and Francois. Please join us. Thanks. Please welcome her.
Good day, everyone. My name is Patricia William, and I have 2 children on the Opportunity Scholarship. I am an honor to be here and thankful that you all are taking the time to listen to my story. I have a son that he is 15 years old. He's been on the program for the last 7 years, since 2004. My son was failing in a public school. He had lack of motivation, poor grades, not reading, and very frustrated because he was not getting his needs met. Ever since my son, 6 months after attending to a private school, my son was a completely different person. Now my son has wonderful grades. He is very, he has a lot of self-esteem. He's very happy. He is looking for going to college, and he's very excited where he is. I also have a son that he's 8 years old, Pierre William, and he also been on the program for 3 years, and he is very successful in his grades, motivated, and he is very looking for also to go to college. I thank everyone that is supporting this program, and I am asking please to continue supporting us for this long journey that is not only my children that are learning, but as a parent, I'm also learning next to them. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to tell our story.
Thank you so much. Really reminds us what we're all here for. Now we get to hear from Malcolm, who is going to tell us about the yearbook from 2001. Give us some details on what made 2011, the, where am I? Back in NCLB, I don't know, or something like that. 2011, the year of school choice. Malcolm, bring it. Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm Malcolm Glenn. I'm the National Director of Communications for the Alliance. If we could start off by just giving Sheila and Patricia another round of applause. I think they're the real heroes here. Oftentimes unsung for all the great things that they do. This is School Choice Now, the year of school choice. This is our annual yearbook on behalf of the Alliance for School Choice, our 6th annual yearbook, and frankly, our most crowning achievement every year. We're really proud of it. We think it's the one-stop shop for all the private school choice news you're ever going to want. And we encourage you to go to yearofschoolchoice.com and download it. You're going to hear me say that a lot. yearofschoolchoice.com. Let me tell you a little bit more about what we do at the Alliance. We are an organization that works to improve the nation's K-12 education through systematic change of the system. We want to make sure that parents have the opportunities to choose the best schools for their kids, and we're particularly focused on low-income families and families with special needs, a number of which I will tell you about in just a moment. So the way we think we can best accomplish that goal is via school choice. Now, you hear a lot of folks talk about school choice. You heard Kevin talk about school choice. You heard the parents talk about the choices they have. What do we mean by school choice? There are a number of different choices out there. I want to make sure that you guys know specifically what our organization does and what choice means to us. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. You're probably most familiar with private school choice related to school vouchers. And that's the nature of the program here in DC. That's the nature of a number of programs throughout the country. When you hear about private school choice in the mainstream media, it's oftentimes related to vouchers. Vouchers are basically the government giving money that would have otherwise gone to a student for public schools directly to the parents, so the parents can choose the school that they think is best for their kids. That's the fundamental goal of it, is to empower parents to do what's best for their kids. We think parents know their kids better than anyone else. Scholarship tax credits are a little bit different. They have a step in between the government and the parents. So there are donors to charitable organizations, either individual donors or corporate donors. They give money to charitable organizations that then give scholarships to kids. They then get a tax credit for the scholarships that they give. So there's an extra step, but it's the same idea, putting the money and the power in the hands of the parents so they can make the best decision for their kids. There's a new type of program that we're really excited about. It's called education savings accounts. There's only one in the country right now, and it was actually upheld by a judge this morning in Arizona court. This is pretty revolutionary. It really broadens the nature of what choice means for parents. So instead of getting a certain amount and only using it for tuition, these folks get an account with a portion of the money that would have been spent on their child in the public schools, and they can use the money for whatever they want related to education. That can be tuition, it can be books, it can be tutoring, and if that kid gets to a point where they're ready to apply to college when they're 18 years old, they can even use that money for college tuition. It's pretty remarkable. And it's not a part of the private school choice movement, but the Alliance is a strong supporter of public charter schools as well. There are millions, literally millions of public charter schools in this country, and they operate within the public system, but with a level of autonomy that is not granted to traditional public schools. They're able to operate outside the traditional bureaucracy that oftentimes makes it difficult for traditional public schools to innovate. And there are a lot of great success stories in the charter school movement as well. We focus on private school choice, but we're strong supporters of public charter schools. That's not the entirety of school choice. There are other options that are out there. There's public magnet schools, there's inter and intra-district school choice, virtual schools, online schools, individual tuition tax credits, about which I will tell you in a moment, and there's homeschooling. You guys are familiar with a lot of these, but our focus tends to be on vouchers, scholarship tax credits, and now ESAs. So let's look at the landscape of school choice today. I think we're going to look a little bit at what's going on now, what's gone on in the past, and Kevin alluded to it, where we're going for the future. There are 13 states, the District of Columbia, and Douglas County that have private school choice programs currently. It's pretty remarkable when you consider that there was one program that began in 1990. For 5 years, there was still one program, and now we're at 27 programs. We began the year last year with 20 programs, so there's 7 brand new programs as of the beginning of last year. It has been, as many people have said, the year of school choice, a remarkable year in terms of expanding private school choice options for families. There are 15 voucher programs, 10 scholarship tax credit programs, the loan education savings account that I told you about, and there's one more, which I will get to momentarily. But I think the most important thing, if you guys look at that number right there, is the fact that we're doing it at a significantly decreased cost than is the case with public schools. So $806 million for these 27 programs, just under $3,800 per scholarship, significantly less than is being spent on public schools. So there are something like 65 or 70 million public school students in this country, spending an approximation of $600 billion. It's almost $10,000 a kid. We're spending less than $4,000. And as you'll see in a moment, the results are oftentimes a lot better. You're getting a much greater return on your investment. Parents are happy, kids are learning. It's a win-win situation. Here are the list of voucher programs that currently exist in the country, and I think there are a couple really important things to point out. So if you look at this program here, the John McKay program in Florida, began in 1999, has almost 23,000 kids. If you look at the program in Milwaukee, began in 1990, has a little bit over 23,000 kids. You look at some of the other programs that are a little bit younger, the Lindsay Nicole Henry program in Oklahoma, 160 kids. The point is that when school choice has been around for a long time, people embrace it. This is not something that people are getting a chance to experience and are deciding that they don't want it. It's in fact the exact opposite. People are experiencing school choice, talking to their neighbors, hearing from friends, realizing that it's raising achievement, realizing that parents are happy, and they're asking for it in their communities. So a theme you'll see as I go through these slides is that when a community gets school choice, they want more of it. So this idea that this is not something that people want is just completely false. You'll see that school choice breeds more school choice, and people tend to realize once they have it that it's something that's really beneficial to them. This is a list of the scholarship tax credit programs, and again, it's a similar story. The three oldest programs are Arizona's individual tax credit program, began in 1997, the 2001 program in Florida, and the program in Pennsylvania, which began the same year. No surprise that those are also the programs with the highest enrollment in the country. Again, when you get access to school choice, you want school choice. Oftentimes you'll hear people say, "Oh well, if there was such a demand for school choice, there would be more of it." There's a reticence, I think, in part because there's a popular notion that this is somehow a radical form of change, which is right. It is radical, but radical in a good way. But people are worrisome about something that goes against the status quo. Once they realize that, yes, this is different, but this is different in a way that is beneficial for my child, they embrace it. And then we also have the ESA, almost 150 kids. We're hopeful that that number will grow significantly in the years ahead. So this gives a geographical breakdown of private school choice programs in the country. And as you can see, there are a number of states that have both scholarship tax credit programs and voucher programs. A number of those states that are just blue have multiple voucher programs, and we're everywhere. We're in the Northeast, we're in the South, we're in the Midwest, and we even made it out to Utah and Arizona. I think this is indicative of the fact that, again, regions, states, communities, however big the demographic, when people get choice, they want more choice. This gives you a little bit of an idea of the extent to which special needs students are served by school choice. You'll often hear that school choice doesn't do a good job of of helping their special needs kids. The reality is almost half of the voucher programs in this country are for special needs kids, and there's representation in each of the other categories as well. And I think it's especially notable that in some of these more innovative school choice programs, ESAs in particular, they're only for special needs kids right now. So it gives the greatest amount of freedom for parents to the kids that need it most. And I think it's a great trend, and I think it's something that is really important that we stress to folks who are interested in learning more about choice, is that this is not just for low-income kids, this is for disadvantaged kids of all stripes, including kids with special needs. You'll see there that there's an individual tuition tax credits program, which I haven't talked about yet. So while we focus on vouchers, scholarship tax credits, ESAs, we do recognize a single individual tuition tax credit program in North Carolina, And this is a state income tax credit that goes to parents who send their kids to private schools. The reason why we recognize this one but not other ones is because this one is up to $6,000, which we believe to be of a significant enough size to actually play a role in whether parents decide to send their kids to a private school or not. So there are a number of states that have some similar provisions that give $500, $600, $700. The reality is, for a low-income or a middle-income family, that's not really going to affect your decision whether or not to send your kid to a private school, because you're not going to be able to make up the difference. This program is different, and so in addition to the other forms of choice, we recognize the individual tuition tax credit program in North Carolina. As Kevin mentioned, 2011 was pretty remarkable. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the developments that made the year so incredible. So, as he mentioned, Indiana enacted a remarkably successful voucher program. It's in fact the most expansive voucher program we've ever had, and it had the highest first-year enrollment of any voucher program in U.S. history. It has even more potential for growth if you consider the fact that next year there is a cap of 15,000 students on the program, and then 2 years from now there's no cap. So this is a statewide, means-tested voucher program that could potentially affect kids everywhere in the state, all across the state, for years and years to come, and it can only get as big as we can imagine it to be. Pretty remarkable, and I think in a lot of ways it's going to set trends for folks who are going to soon realize that you can go big with school choice programs. You don't have to worry about only helping a small segment. You can help everyone. There we go. Whoops. Preview. In Wisconsin, there was a dramatic expansion of what is the oldest school choice program in the country. The Milwaukee Parental Choice Program began in 1990. As I mentioned, for a number of years it was the only school choice program in existence. But now it serves over 23,000 kids, and this year it had its greatest expansion ever. It now allows kids to attend schools outside of the city of Milwaukee. If a kid enters a program and his parents' income raises above the income limit, they're not kicked out of the program. They've already established relationships, friends at their school. They don't have to worry about going to a different school. But one of the most important things to note is that Wisconsin's program helped create another program. The city of Racine, about 30 miles south of Milwaukee, helped, based upon the model set forth by Milwaukee, created the Racine Parental Choice Program. Very similarly designed. It's already helping about 230 kids. And again, another example of how choice begets choice. It began in Milwaukee. People in Milwaukee experienced positive results. The people in Racine saw that. They wanted a choice as well. As I mentioned, Arizona creating the empowerment scholarship accounts. Completely different way of thinking about private school choice, something we hope will grow as the years go by. And last but definitely not least, as Mike and our wonderful parents mentioned, Congress reauthorized the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program. It was on life support 2 years ago. People fought for years and years to make sure that it came back. People fought hard. We had a friend in the Speaker's office, and he was able to essentially set in stone that this was the most important legislative priority he had. It was signed into law in April by President Obama as part of the budget deal, and serving about 1,600 students this year. And I think it's a remarkable example of how people, you, have a role in determining the future of these programs. It's not just up to legislators, it's up to you too. So that's where we were. Let's talk a little bit about where we're going. This is a map of all the expansions we had last year. Kevin mentioned how great of a year it was for expanding school choice. There were actually 11 different programs that had some sort of expansion, be it the lifting of an enrollment cap, greater allowable donations, a whole host of provisions that have made these programs better, bigger, and stronger. And it's part of a growing trend that you'll see in a moment that speaks to great growth potential for school choice. So if you look at this graph, it shows the number of states with at least one school choice program. As I mentioned, 13 states, DC and Colorado makes for 15 programs in 2011. But there's been great growth. If you look at where we started, again, 5 years of one program, and how we've grown over the years, with a pretty steady increase. Each of the past 8 years, there's been at least one new program. From last year to this year, we've had 2 new programs. And I think it speaks to how this movement is very much growing, very much becoming a mainstream part of education reform. But this only tells part of the story. As you can see from the sign on stage, there's been even more growth when you look at the number of different programs. The slope is even steeper. This year was remarkably successful. We had 7 new programs, and this is really, I think, the model of what you're going to see in the years to come. It's not going to be slow. I think people are finally beginning to see that partisanship doesn't matter, that political ideology doesn't matter, and that this is a movement that is only going to get bigger, faster, and better. This gives you an idea of the number of students in each state. And again, if you look at some of the states who have the most students, Florida, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Ohio, Wisconsin, they're all states that have had school choice programs for a decade or more. They see that it works, other people see that it works, and it only grows. There we go. This is, I think, my favorite graph because we often talk about, aggregate numbers. We compare states. It's often a little bit difficult to get an idea of who's being helped by this stuff. There are 210,524 kids in this country who are enrolled in private school choice programs. It's a remarkable number, as you can see, the highest we've ever had. Almost 20,000 more kids than were in programs last year. And again, there's been a steady increase over the years of enrollment, and I think it speaks to the fact that we're not going away. This is a movement that's going to be around for a while. There we go. So we talk about the numbers, how many kids are enrolled, how many programs there are. We get an idea of the scope and size of the movement, but it doesn't mean much if it's not doing these kids any good. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the fact that the results of school choice really sell why this is a movement that should be embraced to an even greater extent than it has already. 95.4%. That's the number of parents with kids enrolled in the Florida tax credit program who are either satisfied or very satisfied with their kids' school. It's a program with almost 38,000 kids. It's been around for over 10 years. It's well established. It's in a lot of ways the model for a number of other programs around the country. If 95% of parents are satisfied with their schools in one of those programs, I think you could call it a success. Standardized test scores, also in the Florida program, increase for public school students in schools most likely to lose students to the scholarship tax credit program. You'll hear from opponents of school choice that it hurts public schools. That's not true. In fact, as a result of the injection of competition into the school districts, as a result of the fact that there's more per pupil spending as a result of kids leaving the school districts, for a host of reasons, public schools where school choice is prevalent actually tend to benefit from choice. So it raises all boats. A lot of folks say, well, if my kids aren't going to be helped by these programs, why should I support them? In fact, your kids will be helped. It really is something that brings positive gains to everyone involved in K through 12 education. an extra month of learning per year. That was the conclusion that a number of gold standard studies conducted in a host of different cities with school choice programs determined. So that means if you're in one of these choice programs, you could learn up to an extra month of learning in your 9 months in school. So it's the equivalent of being in school for 10 months. And if you extrapolate that out over 12 years, K through 12 education, you're a year ahead. Think about what we could do if we could take all the kids that are a year behind and bump them up a year ahead when they graduate from school. It would have a remarkable effect on closing the dropout rate. And this speaks to the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program, the largest impact of any education policy program yet evaluated. That was the conclusion of the Department of Education's Institute for Educational Studies. They determined that not just among school choice programs, not just among education reform programs, but the largest impact of any education policy program yet evaluated. That's important. When people come to you and say that school choice doesn't work, all you have to do is show them the fact that the Department of Education, under a Democratic president, said that, in fact, it works better than anything else. 91%. It's the percentage of kids who graduate from high school as a result of the DC program. You heard Sheila talk about her daughter who's looking for colleges. There are a number of kids who are just like her that otherwise would not have been. Kids who sought vouchers but did not use vouchers graduated at a rate 21 percentage points lower. Kids who were in the public schools generally graduated at a rate more than 30 points lower, indicative of the fact that not only when it comes to parent satisfaction, not only when it comes to gains in test scores, not only when it comes to greater attainment levels, but these kids are graduating and going on to do things that they otherwise would not have been able to do had it not been for school choice. And I think that's something we really have to keep in mind, is that this is, it's oftentimes thought of as a political movement. Politics is obviously a part of the calculation when you're trying to pass legislation. But as these parents taught us today, this is not about winning political points. It's not about promoting a certain ideology. It's about helping kids. And as I've traveled around the country, and as other folks in this movement have traveled around the country, we've realized that there are a lot of reasons to support this stuff, but the most important reason is the faces you see on the screen. They tell stories of how they used to fear going to their school, and now it's the safest place that they go to every day. They tell stories of how they never thought about their futures before, and now they're thinking of being astronauts, lawyers, doctors. This is what we have to keep in mind as we continue this debate. This is what we have to keep in mind as we continue to present this data to folks around the country. This is what we need to keep in mind when we let people know that school choice works. Kevin said something very poignant at the end of his remarks. He said this is about the future of our country. And as Kevin is apt to do, he's going to put it a little more eloquently than I could. Our future lies in how we educate the next generation. It's time for us to help all kids, regardless of their zip code, to ensure that they get the opportunities they deserve. This is not about just kids who are from low-income backgrounds or just kids who have special needs. This is about fundamentally defining the future of our country. The next generation is going to be in charge soon. We have to prepare them as best as we can, and we think that the way to go about doing that is school choice. Now, everything that I just said is in the Alliance for School Choice's yearbook, so I encourage you all to go to yearofschoolchoice.com or the allianceforschoolchoice.org/yearbook, download the yearbook, tell your friends, spread the word, and let people know that school choice is working to a remarkable extent. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take a few questions from Malcolm. Let me ask the first one, if I don't mind. But then if you're interested, do we have microphones? We do have some microphones. Okay, so we'll get somebody to bring that to you. So Malcolm, a lot of people, the conventional wisdom when you look at these charts for 2011 is that what happened was you had these strong Republican majorities in a number of states because of the 2010 elections. You had a lot of Republican governors. Was that the story, or were there some places where things got passed in a bipartisan manner this year?
I think that's a really important question, and the answer is yes. There are a number of examples where school choice exists and school choice grew in large part because of support from Democrats. So I mentioned here in D.C. how President Obama signed into law the D.C. Opportunity Scholarship Program, but I think you can look to other examples. In Georgia, there was a significant expansion of the state's scholarship tax credit program, in large part because of Democratic support. In Pennsylvania, there was a passage of a bill by the state Senate that would create a statewide voucher program, in large part because of Democratic sponsorship, championed by Democrats. In New Jersey, we're looking to pass legislation to create a scholarship tax credit program, Democratic support in both houses. If you look to a place like Florida, overwhelming majority of the legislature supports the program, in part because almost half of the Democrats support the program. Everywhere you look, red states, blue states, states with Republicans controlling the legislature, Democrats. Kevin was in New Mexico. There are Democrats sponsoring legislation there to create scholarship tax credit programs. This is no longer a partisan issue. People might tell you it is, but the reality is there are Democrats, there are Republicans, there are independents who support this stuff because they're realizing that it works.
Okay, great. All right, who's got a question for Malcolm? We'll go here and then Christina. Layla?
Hi.
Tell us, by the way, tell us who you are, where you're from, ask a question, don't make a speech. Okay, you got it. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Layla. I'm from upstairs at the Fordham Institute. Traveled a long way to get here. Thanks for your presentation. I was just wondering, if you met a parent who lived in a state without any school choice options, what would you suggest to them besides moving to a state with school choice options? Thanks.
That's a great question as well. Well, as I said, this is a movement that is up to you. It's up to parents, it's up to advocates, it's up to folks who have kids, it's up to folks who don't have kids. So it's important to make sure that people are made aware of the success of school choice in states through things like our yearbook, download it. So I think the most important thing is to educate. When people know how well this stuff works, they change their minds. So tell them to get in touch with folks who are decision makers. Tell them to let their friends know, let their colleagues know. They need to start a movement. None of these programs started without people on the ground. None of these programs expanded without parents who wanted more for their kids. So the thing I would really say is just let people know, be a sounding board. Get the word out as best as you possibly can, and people will start listening, because in a lot of these states, people didn't think people were going to listen. Parents stepped up, parents spoke up, and now they have school choice.
Great. Christina?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Christina Culver, and I'm an old school choice hack, and it's probably been 9 years since I've been directly involved. So I just want to say, first of all, congratulations. It's great to step away and come and see a report like this where everything's going so well. I actually have a couple of specific questions. One, I wanted to know a little more about that North Carolina program, and is it economically means tested, or can all families participate in that $6,000 tax credit? And then similarly for Arizona with the new ESA, is that means tested, or can everybody participate, or how does that work? And then on a little bit separate note, I'm just sort of curious where you see your biggest challenges this year. What are sort of the top threats now that you've conquered some of the big ones that have been out there?
Both very good questions. Both the tuition tax credit program in North Carolina and the empowerment savings accounts in Arizona are special needs programs. So they're specifically tailored to students with special needs. They're not based upon income, they're based upon the individualized educational needs of the kids. And that's oftentimes the case with a lot of the newer sort of different thinking ways of private school choice in this country.
So if your child's identified with an IEP?
Exactly, an IEP.
So you have to get that first and then you can go.
Right. And as to your question about the biggest challenges, you know, as I say, it's not a Democratic and a Republican issue that's sort of showing itself in getting opposition now from both parties. This is no longer an issue that is only opposed by Democrats either. There's legislative action going on in Pennsylvania. It hit a bump in part because of lack of Republican support. There's a bill we were trying to pass in Tennessee that is being held up in part by reticence from a Republican governor. As to which one is going to be most difficult, which is going to be the longest slog, I think with becoming a mainstream movement also comes more mainstream opposition. So I think it's going to exist everywhere, but with becoming a mainstream movement also means gaining more supporters. So it's going to be a matter of who is getting more people on their side quicker. We think it's us, as you can see from the numbers, but we can only wait and see.
You know, Malcolm, I think this is still true, right? That no private school choice program has been undone legislatively. DC came close, though several have gone down because of court decisions. Right. That's still the case?
Yep.
Okay. So, so of course that doesn't, you know, past performance is no guarantee of future. So we still have to be concerned about legislative pushbacks, but especially it seems like these court cases that come out, this is the main way now that opponents go after these programs. Okay. Let's take one more question here from Joe, and then we're going to wrap up.
Thanks. Joe McTighe from CAPE, the Council for American Private Education. Putting aside the moral argument for school choice and turning strictly to hardcore practical politics, is school choice a politically winning issue for Democrats, and if so, why?
Traditionally, no. Let's just be real about it. Kevin can tell you a little bit about that. It's difficult oftentimes to win an election as a Democrat if you support choice. But the reality is, as this movement becomes more mainstream, organizations are going to be coming to the aid of Democrats. I think there are a lot of organizations out there. Our sister organization, the American Federation for Children, is one of those organizations that does a great deal of outreach to Democrats, support for Democrats, to let them know that, yes, there is going to be opposition to you doing the right thing. There is going to be a difficult road ahead from some of the special interests that are going to attack you for siding with the dark side. But the reality is, it doesn't matter as long as you have people who are going to have your back. And so I think you're seeing more organizations who are coming to the aid of Democrats, more organizations who are making a concerted effort to get more Democratic support, and as a result, stand up for Democrats when Democrats face a difficult election. So, you know, it's still difficult, don't get me wrong. And it's still going to be difficult for a long time, as long as the other side has as an entrenched hold on a lot of the Democratic interests. But as time goes on, and it's already happening, organizations are going to recognize the value of having Democrats, and they're going to make Democrats feel a little bit safer about standing up and doing the right thing.
Okay, let's thank Malcolm again for that great presentation. As well as our parents, thank you again for being here and sharing your time, and Kevin, as always, thank you. We appreciate your time today. Let me do a little commercial for Fordham. If you haven't yet, check out our new website at edexcellence.net. One of the great new features on there is a brand new blog focused on school choice called Choice Words, and it's going to be edited by our brand new Senior Director for School Choice, Adam Emerson, who is from Florida, where he worked with the tax credit scholarship program down there and wrote the Redefined Ed blog. So again, Choice Words, check that out, as well as a bunch of other new blogs on our site. Again, we appreciate you being here. We have an event next week on science achievement on February 1st. That information's on our website. If you're interested in science as well, please come back. Until then, enjoy the rest of National School Choice Week. Thanks.